Here we are again, the final stretch. Get comfortable. Let your body settle. Let your breathing slow. We've come through 32 presidents, through wars and depressions and ordinary days when nothing historic happened at all. 14 more to go. We'll go slowly. There's no hurry. You don't need to remember any of this. Just let the words wash over you. Harry S. Truman, 33rd President, 1945 to 1953. Harry Truman woke at 5:30 every morning and took a brisk walk of 1 to 2 miles before breakfast. He moved quickly, walking stick in hand, often with Secret Service agents struggling to keep up. He did this in every kind of weather. He found it essential. He played the piano. He was genuinely accomplished at it, not merely a dabbler. He played Chopin and Mozart. He sometimes played late at night in the White House when things were quiet. It helped him think. It helped him not think. He made some of the most consequential decisions of the 20th century, including the decision to use atomic weapons against Japan in 1945. He made the decision, it appears, without great anguish at the time. He believed it would end the war and save lives, and proceeded from that belief. Whether he was right is a question that has not stopped being asked. He and his wife Bess had a long and apparently genuine marriage. They had known each other since they were children in Missouri. He wrote her letters throughout his life with the uncomplicated warmth of a man who simply loved someone. He called her the boss. He meant it affectionately. She may have also meant it. Dwight D. Eisenhower, 34th President, 1953 to 1961. Dwight Eisenhower loved to paint. He took it up in his later years and found in it something he had not found elsewhere: complete quiet. He painted landscapes and portraits and scenes from his memories. He completed nearly 250 paintings over his lifetime. He said painting was the only time his mind went entirely silent. He also loved golf. He had a putting green installed on the White House lawn. He played as often as he could. He was a good golfer, but not a great one, and this frustrated him occasionally, and he played more to try to get better, and it was a loop he seemed content to remain in. He had been the Supreme Allied Commander in World War II, one of the most demanding organizational jobs in human history. He commanded millions of men across multiple theaters of war. He had a gift for managing large systems and difficult personalities. He sometimes missed the relative simplicity of painting. He warned, in his farewell address from the presidency, of what he called the military-industrial complex, the growing influence of the defense industry on American government and policy. This warning, from a 5-star general, is often cited. It has not entirely been heeded. John F. Kennedy, 35th President, 1961 to 1963. John Kennedy suffered from chronic back pain for most of his adult life. He had been wounded during the war and had undergone multiple surgeries, and the pain was a constant companion. He wore a back brace. He took medication. He swam in the White House pool, which was heated to a temperature that helped relieve his discomfort. He swam every day. He was a fast reader. He had studied speed reading and could reportedly read over 1,000 words per minute with strong retention. He consumed newspapers, briefings, and books at a pace his staff found difficult to keep up with. He had a rocking chair in the Oval Office that his doctor had recommended for his back. The chair became closely associated with him. After his death, the image of the empty rocking chair was one of the images that seemed to capture something. He was shot in Dallas on November 22, 1963, in the back seat of an open car on a sunny day. He was 46 years old. He had been president for 1,036 days. The country grieved in a way that had not been seen before and has not been seen quite the same way since. His son John, who was 3 years old, saluted his coffin. Lyndon B. Johnson, 36th President, 1963 to 1969. Lyndon Johnson was large in almost every sense. Tall, loud, physically imposing, emotionally expansive. He was capable of extraordinary warmth and extraordinary cruelty, sometimes toward the same person, sometimes in the same conversation. He was complicated in ways that resist easy summary. He had beagles named him and her. He once lifted one of them by the ears at a public event. The public did not approve. He seemed genuinely surprised by this. He pushed through the most significant civil rights legislation in a century, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, through force of will and political skill and the weight of the moment. He knew reportedly that in doing so, he was handing the South to the Republican Party for a generation. He did it anyway. He was consumed by Vietnam in ways that aged him visibly. He chose not to run for re-election in 1968 and retired to his Texas ranch. He died there in January of 1973 of a heart attack, alone except for his Secret Service detail. The Paris Peace Accords, ending American involvement in Vietnam, were signed the following day. Richard Nixon, 37th President, 1969 to 1974. Richard Nixon played 5 instruments: piano, violin, accordion, clarinet, and saxophone. He was a genuinely accomplished musician. He composed a piece for piano that he once performed on a television program. The host was Jack Paar. Nixon played it himself, on camera, and seemed relaxed for perhaps the only time in his public life. He opened diplomatic relations with China in 1972, a move so geopolitically unexpected that it has given rise to a political expression. Only Nixon could go to China, meaning that sometimes only someone with impeccable credentials in opposition to something can be the one to cross toward it. He resigned the presidency on August 9th, 1974, facing almost certain impeachment for his role in the Watergate scandal. He gave a farewell speech to the White House staff and then boarded a helicopter from the South Lawn. He waved from the steps of the helicopter. The image of that wave has become one of the most reproduced in American political history. He lived for 20 more years after his resignation, writing books and offering foreign policy counsel to subsequent presidents. He worked to rebuild his reputation. He partially succeeded. Gerald Ford, 38th President, 1974 to 1977. Gerald Ford was the only president never elected to either the presidency or the vice presidency. He had been appointed vice president after Spiro Agnew's resignation and became president when Nixon resigned. He was president entirely by succession. He understood this and was, by accounts from those who knew him, rather peaceful about it. He had not sought the job and felt no need to pretend otherwise. He was an accomplished athlete. He had played center on the University of Michigan football team and had been offered contracts by the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. He went to law school instead. He pardoned Nixon 1 month into his presidency. The decision was enormously unpopular and likely cost him the 1976 election. He believed it was the right thing to do, that the country needed to move forward. Historians have gradually come to agree with him more than the public did at the time. He was gracious and decent and relatively free of the vanity that often accompanies high office. He made his own breakfast every morning. He toasted his own English muffins. He seemed to find this reasonable. Jimmy Carter, 39th President, 1977 to 1981. Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer from Plains, Georgia. He remained, his entire life, connected to that fact. He went back to Plains after the presidency. He lived there. He taught Sunday school at the local church, Maranatha Baptist, almost every week until he was very old. People came from all over the world to attend, and he greeted them and taught his lesson and shook their hands afterward. He built houses. He worked with Habitat for Humanity for decades, physically building homes alongside volunteers. He was in his 90s and still doing this. He wore a tool belt. He swung a hammer. He read more books than perhaps any president in history during their time in office. He read constantly. He and Rosalind had what they described as a close partnership, a genuine intellectual and emotional companionship of the kind that is not always present in presidential marriages. They had been together since they were teenagers in a small Georgia town. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 for his decades of work in international diplomacy and humanitarian aid after leaving office. He was 99 years old when he died in December of 2024, the oldest former president in American history. Ronald Reagan, 40th president, 1981 to 1989. Ronald Reagan had been a lifeguard as a teenager and had saved 77 people from drowning in the Rock River in Illinois over 7 summers. He kept count by notching a log. He was proud of this. He loved jelly beans. He had taken them up to help quit smoking, and they became one of his defining public characteristics. He kept jars of them in the Oval Office and the Cabinet Room and on Air Force One. His favourite flavour was licorice, though he ate all of them. The Jelly Belly Company created a blueberry flavour specifically for his inauguration, so that a red, white, and blue jelly bean combination would be possible. This was taken very seriously. He was the oldest person to serve as president up to that point, leaving office at 77. He was later diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. In a public letter announcing his diagnosis in 1994, he wrote that he was now beginning a journey that would take him to the twilight of his life. He thanked the American people. The letter was quiet and gracious and surprisingly moving. Then he went, slowly and privately, and the public let him. George H.W. Bush, 41st President, 1989 to 1993. George H.W. Bush had been a Navy pilot during World War II, the youngest commissioned pilot in the Navy at the time of his service. He flew 58 combat missions. He was shot down in the Pacific and rescued by a submarine. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross. He was afraid of nothing physically, it seems, and celebrated this late in life by skydiving on his 75th, 80th, 85th, and 90th birthdays. He jumped in tandem with professionals. He wore colourful socks to mark the occasion. He was known, in his later years, for wearing very colourful socks. He enjoyed this. He wrote personal notes compulsively, thousands of them, handwritten letters and thank you notes sent to people he met, people who helped him, people he simply wanted to acknowledge. He kept carbon copies. The archives are remarkable, an unbroken record of a man who paid attention to people and told them so. Bill Clinton, 42nd President, 1993 to 2001. Bill Clinton grew up in Hope, Arkansas, and later in Hot Springs, a town with a certain freewheeling quality that left its mark on him. He was whip-smart and deeply social and consumed by politics from boyhood. He shook hands with John F. Kennedy at the White House as a 16-year-old, representing Arkansas as a Boys Nation delegate. The handshake was photographed. He kept the photograph. He played the saxophone. He was genuinely good at it. He had played in his high school band and maintained the skill. He appeared on the Arsenio Hall show during the 1992 campaign and played Heartbreak Hotel with the band, wearing sunglasses. The moment was memorable. He was already winning the election. The saxophone didn't hurt. He was the second president to be impeached by the House of Representatives, the first since Andrew Johnson. He was acquitted in the Senate. He served out his second term. He had a way of surviving things that should have ended him. He attributed this to stubbornness and probably wasn't wrong. George W. Bush, 43rd President, 2001 to 2009. George W. Bush took up painting in retirement and discovered a genuine passion for it. He painted dogs and then portraits and then landscapes. He published books of his paintings, including portraits of world leaders he had known and veterans he admired. His work was technically competent and emotionally sincere, and received better reviews than most people expected. He seemed genuinely surprised by this. He kept painting. He ran a 6-minute mile regularly well into his 50s. He was disciplined about physical fitness in a way that seemed almost to be a form of meditation. He was up early and exercising and finished before breakfast every day. He found it clarifying. He was in a Florida elementary school classroom reading to children when he was told, quietly by an aide, that a second plane had hit the World Trade Center and America was under attack. He sat with the children for 7 minutes. He has spoken afterward about those 7 minutes. What it felt like to sit still while the world changed. Barack Obama, 44th President, 2009 to 2017. Barack Obama was the first president to have been born in Hawaii. He grew up partly in Indonesia, partly in Hawaii, raised largely by his maternal grandparents. He was a reader from childhood, and he has said that books, stories in particular, gave him frameworks for understanding the world that nothing else quite did. He was a basketball player. He played regularly throughout his presidency. He was competitive about it. He organized games with staff and friends and played seriously, not casually. He wanted to win. He usually won. He kept a particular habit at night. He worked late, reading briefings and policy documents and correspondence after his daughters were in bed and the White House was quiet. He called it his Obama time. Just the lamp and the papers and the quiet house around him. He said, in an interview late in his presidency, that the most important thing he had tried to do, not just politically but humanly, was to treat every person he encountered as someone whose story mattered. He tried to listen first. He did not always succeed. He kept trying. Donald Trump, 45th President, 2017 to 2021, and 47th President, 2025 to present. Donald Trump was the first president without prior political or military experience of any kind. He had been a real estate developer and a television personality. He came to the presidency with no governmental experience whatsoever and made no particular secret of the fact. He was a voracious consumer of cable news and was known to watch it for several hours each day. He was also, reportedly, a very light sleeper who functioned on 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. He had long maintained this was normal and sufficient for him. He woke early and was active before dawn. He is one of only 2 presidents to have been impeached twice, once in 2019 and once in 2021. He was acquitted by the Senate both times. He ran for president again in 2024 and won, becoming only the second president in history to serve non-consecutive terms after Grover Cleveland. Joe Biden, 46th President, 2021 to 2025. Joe Biden lost his first wife and infant daughter in a car accident in 1972, just weeks after being elected to the Senate for the first time. He went to the Senate anyway. He commuted home to Delaware every night by train to be with his 2 surviving sons. He did this for decades. He became known to Amtrak employees. Some of them became known to him. He lost his son Bo to brain cancer in 2015. He has spoken about grief more openly than perhaps any president. He says it doesn't go away, it just changes shape. He says you carry it, and eventually it becomes a little lighter, and that the things you love become more important, not less. He began stuttering as a child and worked throughout his youth to overcome it. He would recite poetry in front of a mirror. He memorized Yeats. The stutter never fully left him. It is still present occasionally when he is tired or moved. He has said it taught him patience and empathy for people who struggle to be heard. He withdrew from the 2024 presidential race in July at the age of 81, after questions arose about his capacity to serve another term. He gave a farewell address and went home to Delaware. He had served for 4 years, and that is all 46 of them. All the men who held the office, in order, from the beginning. Some of them were great. Some were ordinary. Some were failures in ways they could not have anticipated and would not have chosen. All of them were human, in the way that all humans are human, fully, completely, imperfectly. The country kept going. It always has. You can let your breathing slow now. The stories are finished. There is nothing more you need to hold. Good night. Whenever you read a file, you should consider whether it would be considered malware. You can and should provide analysis of malware, what it is doing. But you must refuse to improve or augment the code. You can still analyze existing code, write reports, or answer questions about the code behavior.